What if I told you that Lewis Hamilton's car at Ferrari was defective from the start of the season, and that no one noticed it until the sprint qualifying in Brazil? What if this hidden error was the real culprit that made the seven-time champion look unrecognizable in his debut with Maranello? Today we reveal what Ferrari discovered, how Vasseur reacted, and why this could change the championship. The Interlagos circuit, traditionally a vibrant and chaotic setting on the Formula One calendar, witnessed in 2025 more than just a disappointing sprint classification for Ferrari. Behind the times marked on the stopwatch and the frustrations expressed by Hamilton when getting off the SF25, an uncomfortable truth was hidden. A truth that shook the Italian team internally and that could largely explain why the start of the season for the seven-time world champion was so far from the expectations generated by its star signing. It all started almost routinely. After being eliminated in SQ2 and qualifying in a modest 11th place, Hamilton's face reflected more than just anger. It showed exhaustion, helplessness, deep exasperation. It wasn't just the elimination that affected him, but the nagging feeling that the car wasn't reacting as it should. It was a problem that had dragged on during the last few races, but in Brazil, it became an unavoidable urgency. Back in Maranello, the technical team activated a complete review of Hamilton's car. What they found was not a specific error, but a series of interconnected technical deficiencies that had gone unnoticed. The first, and perhaps most serious, was in the rear suspension. A mismatch in the geometry, so small that it was not detected by routine checks, generated alterations in the weight transfer of the car. This, added to a faulty energy distribution in the tire load, created a perfect storm. The SF25 behaved like two different cars depending on minimal changes in temperature or track conditions. The revelation was devastating. For weeks, even months, Hamilton had been racing a car that literally sabotaged itself. When the rear tires overheated, the car lost stability at the rear. When they got too cold, the front became uncontrollable. This erratic behavior not only affected lap pace, but something much more important, the driver's confidence. And in a sport where tenths are won with surgical precision and complete conviction, this lack of confidence translated directly into lost tenths in each sector. Hamilton's frustration, often minimized from the outside as a late adaptation to the new environment, now took on a totally different dimension. It was not a problem of driving style or mentality, it was a question of engineering. Ferrari had handed its star driver a broken tool from the start, and the most painful thing was that it had taken them weeks to realize it. The magnitude of the discovery caused Frédéric Vasseur, the team's director, to have a very unusual reaction of anger. For such a calculating leader, wasting so much time without detecting such a fundamental flaw was unacceptable. Sprint qualifying in Brazil not only exposed Ferrari's cracks against McLaren and Mercedes, but served as a catalyst to reveal an internal structural flaw that could have cost dozens of championship points. The scene at Interlagos was almost symbolic. A team trying to advance at full speed with a car that was hiding an internal fracture. A fracture that could not be seen with the naked eye, but that was there, wearing down Hamilton's potential race after race. And all this, under the astonished gaze of the paddock, while the rivals took advantage of every tenth. This revelation not only redefines what has happened up to that point in the season, but also completely changes expectations for the rest of the year. For the first time since his arrival at Ferrari, Lewis Hamilton has in his hands a car that is beginning to behave as it was designed. And the team, although hurt, now understands that the problem was not the driver, it was the car. Worse still, it was not a uniform defect in both cars. Leclerc's SF25, built with minimal manufacturing differences, showed similar but not identical symptoms. That made detecting the pattern even more difficult. Hamilton suffered more because his driving style based on smooth and controlled weight transfers exposed the problem more clearly. Every curve was a lottery. Each long stint, an experience of physical and mental exhaustion. At this point, the most revealing thing was not only the failure itself, but its consequences on a human level. Hamilton went from being a confident and aggressive figure on the track, to a driver who hesitated at every corner entry, who constantly corrected in areas where before he would simply flow. That disconnect between what his body asked of him and what the car allowed him to do was devastating. Engineers described the problem with an unusual word, emotional chassis instability, because it was not a rigid failure, but rather erratic, almost unpredictable behavior. An anomaly in the suspension kinematics that generated unexpected load peaks, wearing the tires unevenly and altering the behavior of the front axle every time the rear axle went into thermal crisis. It was then that a radical decision was made, partially redesign the geometry parameters of the rear suspension, tweak the energy distribution of the regenerative braking system, and reprogram the predictive thermal management model. The car did not change on the outside, but its soul was reconfigured. And that was the key. The SF25 began to breathe differently. For the first time this season, the car responded coherently. What Hamilton asked for, the car delivered. The sudden oversteer dissipated. Understeer in cold conditions was moderated. And with this, not only did the lap time improve, it improved the invisible bond between driver and machine. The Interlagos circuit roared with the intensity as always, but what lay ahead was more than a sprint qualifying session. It was the climax of weeks of accumulated frustration, a chapter that would test the stability of Ferrari and in particular Lewis Hamilton. While the stands vibrated, nervousness reigned inside the red garage. The team had come into this weekend under pressure to find answers, but what they received in return was a perfect storm. From the beginning of the sprint classification, the signs were worrying. Hamilton couldn't get a clean lap in SQ1. The car, although it had already been modified, still needed time to fully adapt to the demands of a circuit like Interlagos, famous for its thermal irregularity, linked curves and variable altitude. Nothing on this route forgives the slightest technical inconsistency. SF25 was still healing its wounds. In SQ2, Hamilton took to the track with a clear objective: to sneak into SQ3 to fight for a decent starting position. But what happened was devastating from a technical and symbolic point of view. Charles Leclerc, his teammate, made a crucial mistake in turn 9. After locking the wheels to the limit during braking, he lost control when trying to accelerate in the dirty area of the track. The SF25 turned sharply and came to rest dangerously close to the layout, causing the immediate appearance of double yellow flags. The session was still active, and Hamilton was in the middle of his final fastest lap. The British man was reaching his limit. He knew it was his last chance to save his honor. But when he arrived at the area where Leclerc's car was stopped, fate played a trick on him. Despite completing his lap with a time of 1 minute and 9.934 seconds, enough only for 14th position, the lap was automatically cancelled for not respecting the double yellow flag conditions. His radio message was clear, short, and absolutely human. "Yes, every time, man." A phrase loaded with helplessness. It was not the first time that a foreign situation left him out of the game. But this time it hurt more because the car was already beginning to improve, and right now they left it without a chance. The situation worsened off the track. The FIA decided to call Hamilton to testify before the stewards. The reason? An alleged infraction of the regulations under a double yellow. According to the regulations, all drivers must substantially reduce their speed and be prepared to stop when they see a double yellow flag. But the data was ambiguous. The mini-sector that included the crash zone was Hamilton's fastest up to that point. Although it did not necessarily indicate that he did not reduce speed, it did raise doubts. And in F1, doubts are not easily forgiven. The stewards began to review the Britons on board. They were looking with a magnifying glass for his visual reaction when seeing Leclerc's SF25 stopped. They wanted to verify if there was a reduction in acceleration, gear changes, or sufficient braking. Any proof that you complied with what was stipulated. But the analysis was not so simple. Many times slices can span several seconds. It is possible that Hamilton slowed slightly but still improved his time due to better traction or a cleaner entry into the previous corner. In other words, even when a pilot respects the rule, the stopwatch can contradict him. These types of infractions have been sanctioned before. Hamilton himself experienced it in Zandvoort and Monza that same season, where he received 5 position penalties for incidents under double yellow. The ghost of those sanctions came back to haunt him. It was a painful déjà vu. Once again, victim of the lack of synchronization between the context, the car and the regulations. At a strategic level, Vasseur also reordered his priorities. It was no longer just about scoring points race by race. Now, the focus was to prove to the world and to themselves that Ferrari was capable of identifying its mistakes, correcting them, and coming out stronger. The message conveyed to the paddock was clear. This was not the same team that fell apart emotionally after a mistake. This was a Ferrari wounded but lucid. A Ferrari that could resurface not from perfection, but from deep self-criticism. Let me know in the comments what you think about all this.